The Honourable Louise Upston.
Mr Speaker, it's really an honour to speak in the Prime Minister's debate today. And it's somewhat confusing because if you were to listen to the speeches of the opposition members, Mr Speaker, you would think that New Zealanders up and down this country are in a mood of doom and gloom and there is nothing positive on our horizon. Mr Speaker, I can only say that if you reflect the mood at Waitangi this year, there was a bit of hype and conversation about how combative it might be. But I actually think Waitangi Day is a really good illustration of the mood of the nation. It was quiet. It was peaceful. There were not protests. There were not frustration. And it's really interesting because the speaker before me talked about the fact that a leader of the country should be in touch with ordinary New Zealanders. Now, Mr Speaker, there is no way that the National Party would have got close to 50% of the support of all New Zealanders in the election last year if we had a leader that was not in touch with ordinary, hard-working New Zealanders. Because what are they interested in? They're interested in having more jobs available, they're interested in their wages going up, they're interested in interest rates remaining low, and they're interested in unemployment rates falling. And that's exactly, Mr Speaker, the results that the first two terms of the national government led by Prime Minister John Key have delivered, and we are keeping our promises to hard-working New Zealanders. We are focusing on the issues that matter to them, raising education standards, lowering crime, providing better access to health services, Mr Speaker, and genuinely and generally improving the lives of ordinary New Zealanders and their families. Mr Speaker, I think it's quite the opposite for Annette King to suggest that this side of the House isn't energised and excited. Mr Speaker, I can tell you this government is raring to go, enthusiastic and energetic about what we have in front of us, which is quite different from the mood if you were watching when Andrew Little delivered his first speech in the House this year. It felt awkward and awful, and the opposition benches were trying to be enthused about their kick-off of their leader this year.
Four of them were.
But, Mr Speaker, I want to focus on a couple of specific areas. The previous speaker talked about the employment market, talked about the workforce in quite a lot of detail. Mr Speaker, what he didn't say is that in terms of the latest household labour force survey, women's participation in the labour market and women's employment is at record highs. Didn't mention that, wasn't excited about that. It must have been a bit disturbing for his female caucus members, who I would have thought should have been quite excited about those sorts of statistics. I know I am. Participation rate for women is 64.6% and the employment rate is 60.4%. They are the highest. They are the highest since the survey began in 1986. So that's what this government's delivering, Mr Speaker. Great news for women up and down New Zealand. But I want to cut into a bit more detail. 7,300 more Māori women and 1,800 more Pacifica women in employment than in December 2013. Again, results we should be celebrating. And I'm not hearing the celebrations from the other side of the House. Because actually we are relevant, Mr Speaker. This side of the House focuses on the issues that matter to New Zealanders. And Prime Minister John Key, on his very first speech, said he would lead a government for all New Zealanders. And that's exactly what he's doing. If you look at where some of this growth in women's employment is occurring, Canterbury is a great example. Women are playing a really critical part of the rebuilding in Canterbury. And an example is that there are 7,700 more women employed in Canterbury than at the same time in 2013. Part of that is because of the consideration of girls and women looking at what were considered non-traditional employment opportunities. That's where the growth is. So, Mr Speaker, as Minister for Women, I'm committed to having some courageous conversations with business, with community, with families about what are some of the biases that exist for girls and women that restrict their opportunities and their opportunities for economic independence in New Zealand. One aspect of this, Mr Speaker, is the current gender pay gap. And, you know, I've had a number of people who've said to me, why do we even have a Minister for Women? Well, Mr Speaker, it is incredibly clear to me, while we have a gender pay gap of 9.9%, there is work for the Ministry for Women. But it's not just about women in the workforce that I want to focus on, Mr Speaker, because if you look at other areas that are critical to them, some of it is very clearly around their families. And when we talk about employment relations legislation, the Speaker before me didn't say anything about the Act that we've just passed, didn't say anything about the fact that part of that legislation was for flexible workplaces and flexible work practices. So no longer is it just the fact that somebody has caregiving responsibilities that they can ask their employer for flexible work arrangements. And I think, Mr Speaker, in terms of women in the workforce, that it is an incredible advantage. And I've been waiting to hear the opposition, who pride themselves on being the champions for the workers, to celebrate this incredible result for women in our workplaces. But no, they tend to be fairly silent on that one. Because, Mr Speaker, this is a government that recognises the diverse and very different needs of workers. This is a government who is delivering for workers, and that is just one example. I want to give you another example, paid parental leave. This is a government who is focusing on making sure that our paid parental leave and our parental tax credits are actually accessible and available to more New Zealand families. And that's something I'm incredibly proud of, Mr Speaker, because it is when we have families where, you know, women or men choose to be in the workplace, we want to provide the opportunities and provide the support that they need to get ahead. Mr Speaker, one of the clear areas that I will continue to focus on as the Minister for Women is reducing violence. Mr Speaker, we have already made some good inroads in terms of reducing crime rates in this country and to reducing reoffending. But, Mr Speaker, I'm very clear that our homes and our communities should be the safest places for New Zealanders, and particularly for our young girls and our women. And that's why, Mr Speaker, working with my ministerial colleagues on this area of domestic violence, we will be finding more ways and broader ways and reaching out and working with others to ensure that that level of violence is decreasing. And looking at unique solutions that actually work for families and work in communities. Mr Speaker, the other clear area that I am responsible for is the area of land information. And this is an area that, Mr Speaker, not many people are actually aware of the contribution that this makes to our economy. We have a system of property rights in New Zealand that is very robust and very strong. And that really underpins a lot of information and a lot of decisions that we make in central government and also across businesses. And just recently, the 2014-15 Open Data Barometer Global Report showed that New Zealand continues to be one of the best countries in the world at allowing open access to government data. And of course, open data is a key indicator of a country's innovation, transparency and its lack of corruption. If you were fortunate enough to attend the Geospatial Excellence Awards like I did last year, Mr Speaker, you realise the wizardry of some of our New Zealanders in terms of using location information to solve some of the very large challenges that we face as a country, and it's underpinning an important part of our economic recovery. Mr Speaker, in closing, I want to say that we really are living in exciting times. We have a country that is growing, that is expanding, where we are reducing things like crime, we are raising educational achievement. This is a government that is raring to go. This is not a government who is anywhere near having completed our work and our plan. We're in this together, and we are fortunately led by a Prime Minister who has said very clearly, we are not here to fill the green seats. We are here to do a lot for New Zealand. We've done a lot. There's still a lot more to go, and it's great to know that nearly 1 in every 2 New Zealanders is backing us. Thanks, Mr Speaker.